All right, so welcome everyone. I hope you had a nice bit of a break there. My name is Melissa. I'm the president of JETAA Northern California and Nevada, abbreviated as NC, but we're not North Carolina. And I'll be your moderator for today's panel with the JETAA USA Board of Advisors. I got involved as the moderator because I've actually been on the bylaws working group, and that's really given me a new insight into the board and the really critical role that they play within the organization. So this is a 30-minute session, and to ensure we're able to move through the agenda smoothly, I'll ask that everyone hold their questions until the end. We will have a few minutes for Q&A as well. So you have probably started to hear some names that you'll see today, and put some faces to some of those names. And you might be aware that there is a board of advisors, but this might also be your first time really understanding who they are and what their function is within the organization. So just to provide a brief overview, the board was formally added to the bylaws 10 years ago, so in 2012, but it unofficially was active even before then. And the board was established to recognize and define a more formalized structure of support for the CRs, to provide a pathway to retain the experience and expertise of veteran leaders who have a track record of considering and working on issues related to the bigger picture of JETAA USA, some of which came up in the previous session, and to preserve and ensure the transfer of institutional knowledge and experience as a foundation for future projects and initiatives, so that JETAA USA and its chapters don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So the board currently has 8 members who represent a diverse range of JET experiences, chapter affiliations, and professional expertise. Our panelists today will be Jessyca Livingston, Monica Yuki, Mark Frey, and Stephen Horowitz. But the board also includes James Gannon, Bahia Simons Lane, Cheryl Ho, and Ryan Hart. And they are, I think most of them are also here too, so they might chime in, but you'll definitely see them in other sessions as well. And there is also a slide deck attached as a resource to this Zoom session. So if you click on the session and go down to the bottom, you'll see an attachment there. And it has a profile for each member and some more information about their background. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point. And we can have our panelist spotlight here so that we can get started with the discussion. I think everybody's really missing.
Hey, Melissa, we're missing Stephen. He's having a little bit of trouble getting in, so we're working on it.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll have him in here shortly.
Great. And then I see, do we have Mark spotlight? I got a different view here, so.
You guys have the stop light, the light on, but we'll work on, it's still in gallery view for me, so we'll see if we can get that fixed for you guys. Go ahead and get started, and we'll work out the tech stuff.
Great, thank you. So I hope that this overview kind of highlighted the essential elements or the essential functions that the board serves as senpai advising JETAA USA's leadership and also preserving that institutional knowledge. So to start out with, Jessyca, I was wondering if I could ask you to share a little bit more about how the board was initially formed and what factors have been top of mind as you've considered who to approach for potential board members as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, so the board was formalized in 2012 when we voted in our first set of bylaws. And so that's really how it became formalized. But as Melissa mentioned, it had kind of existed in a more amorphous stage sort of before that. But the real catalyst for formalizing it was the experience of 3/11 and just the huge burden that put on the 3 CRs, and I happened to be one of the CRs during that time period. It was a lot of work to try and figure out how to manage the relief fund that the JETAA USA community had put together, and how to just properly execute all of I mean, I won't go into it because it's a huge story in and of itself, but there was a lot to manage and there was a lot to execute. And the 3 country reps that were in place, including myself at that time, it was just a big burden, and we didn't have the skill set and the talents and the network that we needed to really be effective with that. And so I started reaching out to our other JETAA community leaders that didn't have a title, but they were sort of out there, and you find them and you connect with them, and they start supporting. And so that was really how the Board of Advisors sort of formalized. And I realized with that experience how important it was to have another body, another group of people that were willing to be there and support the country reps through some of these bigger issues that we've experienced. Like in 2009, there was the JET threat. In 2011, we had 3/11. And then really moving on from 2012 to 2015, the Board of Advisors and the country reps had a huge part in supporting the formation of US JETAA. So all these things together just made it very clear that we needed another place to sort of retain our longstanding leaders and the institutional knowledge and the experience and the skill sets and all the things that come with these people. We needed to be able to hold on to it somehow so that we could tap into it when we needed. So that was how and a little bit of why it was formed. And then your second part was just how we add to our group. We've been pretty grassroots. I think JETAA USA and the whole, for a large portion of its history has been very grassroots, and we've called it a community for a long time. And I've noticed that there's been a shift now between calling it community and calling it an ecosystem. And to me, that's quite reflective of how much we've grown. An ecosystem to me infers that there's a lot more bits and pieces and groups that are included in an organization in a larger sense. And so as we move over there, we are starting to draw sort of more people into the advisory board. It's been very grassroots. We don't have a formalized, there's no application, that you have to submit. It's not like when you applied for JET, it's not the same thing. But basically, it's just, right now it's been very informal, and we've just sort of been able to identify some key leaders in our ecosystem or our community. And as soon as they jump off their current leadership train, we try and catch them. And that doesn't mean we know everybody that's out there. There are certainly people that have made an impact that we might, we are just not on our radar. And so we catch the people that we can, and the people that we have that are out there that we don't know about, definitely we encourage them to nominate themselves, nominate somebody else. Like I said, there's no formal structure to getting on. So it's just making yourselves known. I do think there's definitely criteria that we're looking for. We're hoping that you have a lot of leadership experience, especially in the JETAA world, and a real demonstrated ability to carry through. All of us that are on the board, we've been through a lot of different projects and working groups and highs and lows. And it's a really solid group of people who are willing to carry the weight and roll up their sleeves and get it done. And that's really important. And then a long-term dedication to JETAA, and also an understanding of sort of the big picture view, understanding sort of the larger JETAA world and the larger US-Japan landscape, and that encompasses a lot. So having that type of mindset is also a real asset to the board, and therefore to the country reps, and therefore to JETAA USA.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I think it really is apparent how much all of you are committed to supporting the organization and finding kind of an avenue to continue doing that and leveraging all of your networks and your personal experiences. So if anyone wants to know what it takes to join the board, I think looking at the role models who are there right now is a great way to start. So I think in the context of maybe where chapter leaders sort of see the board fitting in is primarily working with the CRs and supporting the CRs, but you also have been a resource for chapters more directly as well. And for example, Monica, I was able to tap into your expertise when I was updating the bylaws for my chapter. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about how the board has supported chapters, or why might a board want to reach out to you?
Sure. Well, Shannon called it earlier in her session when she said, it's veterans' voices, and we are truly veterans. We've been there, seen it, heard about it, and we want to connect you with people who have been in those situations. I've been involved with JETAA for 17 years. And like many of the other board members, we're volunteers, chapter leaders, board members, and still active in our local chapter. I'm actually hosting an event at my house next week. And it's fun to click through this awesome NatCon and just see how many leaders I've already had a chance to work with and connect with and learn from over time. So I'm looking forward to speaking with more of you, but reasons or ways or why you would even contact a board member goes beyond your CR. Definitely reach out to your CRs. They're your main point of contact, but the CRs are the younger version of us back when we were green and knew all, like, it was just a learning experience. So we have been through all those things and we work directly with the CRs, but things that the board has done over the years is everything from reporting GIA, not reporting GIA, money being stolen from chapters, questions on what meets the guidelines. As you can see, my expertise is kind of in GIA. Before the pandemic and before Zoom was a thing, I actually hosted webinar sessions on how to use your GIA more effectively, how to make your dollar go further, how to use GIA and MOFA as seed money to make, to start building a reserve account for chapters, to grow your funds, one, in case it goes away, or two, in case there's things that you want to host within your chapter that do not meet GIA requirements. Leadership, come to us with questions on that. I've actually visited and worked in person with 13 of the chapters, with their leaders, their members, their sub-chapters, in order to build leadership, types of events, funding, improving communication. And as Melissa mentioned, I've worked with her chapter and several other ones on bylaws, building leadership boards. And then there's also some of the tough things, focusing on leaders ghosting a chapter, conflicts in leadership, sexual harassment issues, but also the positive things like building an advisory board, a board of directors, empowering leaders to balance their volunteering and empowering them to gain professional skills through their volunteer activities. We do a lot with candid and we can offer impartial or sensitive opinions on anything your chapter's dealing with. So go to your CRs, you can come to us. We're all here as a part of your ecosystem of senpai who have been around the block many, many times, have seen many things, and we just are here to help you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's just reassuring to have your knowledge and expertise, both within the JET world and kind of beyond it, as well as professionals, accessible for everyone. And speaking to that, you all do have an incredible wealth of knowledge and experience within the JETAA community and a very unique insight into how it's evolved over the years. Many of you were directly involved with some of those pivotal moments and initiatives that Matt introduced during the first session. And Mark, I was wondering if you could speak a bit to the role the board has played in past challenges and also what you see as critical or kind of emerging challenges facing JETAA now, something that you see as kind of shaping the future of JETAA.
Yeah, thanks so much. Can you hear me okay? Great. Yeah, hello everyone. Honestly, I get very rarely as excited as when it's NatCon time. So it's just a fantastic way to connect with people, reconnect with people. So really glad to be here with you all. Yeah, so just talking about some of the past, but more importantly, like kind of future challenges, current challenges that we're facing as an organization, as a community. First thing I'd like to say is, like, if you're getting stressed out by JETAA, you're doing it wrong. Like, you know, like this should be the area of our lives that's like edifying and like joyful and you know, happy. And if it's not, that's a red flag. And what you should do is don't go it alone, phone a friend, right? That indicates to you that it's time to bring in somebody. And I guarantee there's somebody in the community that can help out and like reduce your stress and like help you overcome it. Or maybe they just offer perspectives that like, hey, maybe it's not such a big deal. Maybe you don't need to focus on that. Maybe we can focus on other things, right? So that's what's kind of kept me semi-sane, you know, in my years in JETAA. And I hope that you can all keep stress-free and sane as well. So, you know, we've talked about with this great history that we've had earlier today about some of the past challenges we've had. And so these include, we mentioned like the jet threat when like the Japanese government was going to cut our funding. And so we all coalesced, right? And that's when between that and then kind of our response to the 3/11 disaster, and then also kind of building up US JETAA, right? These are all examples of where like, we're all kind of like in our little chapters or whatever. And it's like, oh, wow, we need to pop our heads out and really connect with each other because there's something larger and bigger and much more, not important, but, definitely something bigger than our own chapters. And so it's kind of organically through working through those challenges that we kind of gelled, honestly, as a national and international community, in my opinion. So thinking about like current and future challenges, the pandemic, like there was this little thing called the global pandemic, and it was this global pandemic, and then people just dropped off the face of the earth. Raise your hand if like you don't see people or they just disappeared, right? Raise your hand if your membership seems to have gone off a cliff, right? Or you're just trying to like literally find people out there. Like, are you still there? This is really real. So we're in a rebuilding phase, right? And it's not easy to rebuild community, right? It's much easier to sustain something than to like have to like create something from scratch or rebuild something. So if you're feeling that, it's real. And again, let's use opportunities like this NatCon. Let's use our relationships to figure out how we can re-engage people. The good news is that after 3 years of this thing, people are looking to reconnect.
He looks really good, but he doesn't sound so great.
Thank you for saying something. I totally thought that was me and my internet.
While we're waiting for Mark to connect again, would anyone else like to chime in on the challenges?
I wasn't really following along with where he was in his whole speech, but Mark said it perfectly, that there has been challenges along the way, but as long as we're working together as a board and as chapter leaders and as CRs, we can get through all these different threats, the threat of the program going the way, the threat of anything that kind of throws at us, and who now we have main points of contact through US JETAA and through the CRs and through all the chapter leaders who are stepping up in their local areas and playing that pivotal role to enhance the program and enhance alumni across the board.
Thanks for bringing us home on that question there. Yeah, I can definitely saw a lot of challenges with my chapter, but also a lot of opportunities with kind of a shift in understanding of how we can hold events, how we can organize, how we can collaborate. And I'm really appreciative that that's also something that the board is thinking about and working to support as well. So to kind of bring us home on a forward-looking note, I was wondering if Stephen could talk a bit about what keeps you engaged with JETAA as someone who has all this experience and you haven't gotten tired of it yet. So what opportunities are you most excited about, and what brings you back to JETAA all the time?
Oh, thanks, Melissa. Oh,
yeah.
Hold on. Oh, I'm unmuted now. Okay. Thanks, Melissa. That's a good question. I think the thing that excites me, and I think kind of excites everybody, whether you sort of realize it or not, is the same thing that's always excited me, which is the potential. You know, that back when I started as the newsletter editor in New York, my big sense was like, there's this huge community out there, and it was a lot smaller than it is now. It's this untapped resource, you know, and I knew there were people like Bruce Feiler, who's now a very established author, who wrote Learning the Bow, and guys like George Rose, who was the interpreter for Hideki Irabu, and later went on to work for the Yankees. I knew there were other JET alums out there like that. But, you know, in no way of knowing. And that's so I want, you know, you want to figure out who they are and make this community, you know, more interesting and make everybody aware of it so that it's a more interesting and more intriguing and more powerful resource and fun community to be a part of. You know, didn't know what people did after JET. So I was trying to figure that out. It's still the same goal now. And I think it's still the same thing that motivates me and many others. We know a lot more now. We know what people do after JET, right? They go into international ed, they go into teaching, they go into translating and interpreting. They're lawyers, they're doctors, scientists, they're government workers, they're local and federal workers, they're policymakers, they're politicians even, writers, artists, journalists, designers, even HR professionals, hospitality experts, and librarians, some of them, amazingly. So that's our CRs, by the way. So anyway, now we've got this great community and we know it a lot better. And there's so much that we can still do with it. There's no kind of limit to it. Whatever, there's this resource that you can do anything you want. Well, not anything you want, but there's a lot that you can do with it. And as it grows in reputation, it benefits all of us, because now when you go apply for a job and somebody knows you are on JET, that's a positive thing. That didn't used to be like that. People would be like, what? What's that? Oh, you went and wasted a year? Now it's viewed in a much more positive way. And we've got a bigger seat at the US-Japan table, right? And it's a virtuous cycle, because the more JET alums who we help get jobs, the more, the better that is for JETAA USA and the JET alum community in general. And we do this because we create a positive vibe, that engages people, that makes people want to be part of the community. And so I'm always excited at the idea of creating that positive vibe, because there's still, those of us at this conference now is a tiny drop in the bucket. Even if you look at all the JETs who are associated with a chapter, still less than half the JET alums in the world. There's a huge JETasphere out there. So there's still more to engage and more that we can do. And it helps the JET program. It makes sure that there's excellent grassroots connections between Japan and the rest of the world. That's invaluable. That's hugely valuable. And to be part of that is amazing. And it's not just about us either. We've become a model for grassroots diplomacy programs and a model for alumni programs. Like, other alumni organizations look to us now to see what we're doing. We used to be like, what does everybody do? And then we realized, oh, we're doing it really well. We're engaging people really well. So what excites me, and what I think our challenge is also, is how do we keep engaging people? How do we keep people staying involved? How do we capture this community culture and pass it on and transfer it to future generations? Because I think that kind of positive vibe is one of the things we really need in this world right now. As the workplace culture has changed and become much more transient, and you can't depend on an organization, you can't depend on a company or a workplace. It's a community like the JET alum community and other alumni communities that can really fill that void and give you a sense of community. And I think that's part of making the world a better place and building trust in the world. So that's what excites me. It keeps me motivated. How was that?
That was wonderful. No, you got me so excited as well. And I've been reflecting on the really how I think Paige also spoke to, just there are JETs everywhere, right? And all these connections that we can potentially have, just you can discover them in so many different places. I'm happy to announce that my organization just hired a JET. And we had not been connected with this person before, and it was through our mutual JET connection that we were able to meet her and hire her. So I'm very excited about that. And I think it just speaks to your point that there's all of these opportunities out there, and that kind of this kind of positive energy that we're able to put out really yields back great returns. So I'm also excited about the future potential that's out there. So I want to just say thank you to all of our panelists here, and also open it up for questions. We have a few minutes. I want to take a minute or two to wrap up at the end, but we have 2 or 3 minutes. If anyone does have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat or raise your hand so that you can ask your question verbally.
while we're waiting for questions, I just want to mention, this is kind of like that big picture thinking that I mentioned before. Like everybody that's here, like we all have one thing in common, right? It's we were all on the JET program and we all love Japan. And so it's sort of taking that experience, and obviously we all have a personal connection with it. So it's taking that experience and sort of giving it back. And, you know, while we were on JET, we gave it to our communities in Japan. And now that we're at home, it's taking that experience and giving it to our communities here and continuing to be that bridge between the two countries and just figuring out any way that we can do that. And at the same time, building up the JETAA USA community, right? Like we can take all this experience, all this collective experience, and sort of roll it all in together and do exactly what Stephen was saying, which is build up the reputation of the JET program, build up the reputation of JETAA USA, feed ourselves and feed our community. And that's, you know, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that, and we can get to questions too. But yeah, and what, like, nuts and bolts, what does that mean? Right? Like JET threat, like, you know, we had to kind of prove our value in so many different, we came up with so many different ways, like, oh, how many tourism dollars have JETs been associated with? How, you know, how many volunteer hours, right? But like 311 was like a really concrete way that we showed that we like gave back to Japan. But thinking now, it's like, how many of your chapters are logging your volunteer hours? Right? And then can you like monetize, you know, show how much money that's worth that you're giving, you know, kind of giving. How many of your chapters do like a very informal annual report that you share with, you know, your local consulate or with Claire, right? Obviously through the budgeting process, they have some idea, but like, how are you really touting it? And maybe it's just like a really quick Google doc that you put together, right? It's nothing fancy or formatted. But also like, how about like your prefectures and like, how about the people local on the ground, right? And you guys have all heard me talk about the Kenjet Kai program, but like, I got to go back on a family visa to Japan this June, and I recorded videos for our CIRs in Kumamoto Prefecture, where I worked on JET, and I was basically touting JETAA, join JETAA, right, to like the departing jets. I was like, join a sister city, right? And then I made another video for the incoming jets, right, so that they hear and feel the JET alumni in a way that like maybe we didn't necessarily feel ourselves. So keeping that grassroots perspective, I think, and really thinking about how you can reconnect with, you know, the folks in your prefecture back in your, is like a way that like then bubbles up, and then all of a sudden there's all these great stories of these JET alums reconnecting with their prefectures and still helping them out and adding value.
So many people are still connected with their host institutions. And I think the importance of keeping that connection alive and telling them what you're doing is huge, because the money from the JET program that hosts JETs comes from those host organizations, those host institutions. So let them know that you're volunteering and that you're spending your time on US-Japan relations. JETAA USA is US-Japan relations, and telling them that, just like, it's one more piece that proves that their money is going farther than just the end of the contract.
Thank you so much. We are at our last minute here, so I just wanted to close with, again, huge thank you to all our panelists and to the entire board for the work that you do. And I hope that everyone listening in here sees that you have so many great ideas, so many great suggestions, and you're constantly thinking about these different factors that really help build a successful, vibrant community and ecosystem. So just wanted to point out, recap a few reasons that you might want to connect with the board of advisors. And right now, the best way to get in touch with the whole board would be to contact the country rep at JETAAUSA.com email. We are talking about also potentially having a way to connect with the board directly. So the CRs will be discussing that. And then just wanted to also highlight all of the wealth of connections that the board members have that build out these components of the ecosystem, where it's not just within the JET community directly, but within the US government and US-Japan relations, nonprofits, policy organizations, and also exchange organizations. So definitely tap into these folks, connect with them during the conference as well. You'll see them in other sessions, and just know that they're out there, they've got your back, and that they are always able to provide their experience and their advice and perspective. So thank you, everyone.
Very good. Thank you so much, Melissa, for facilitating and to our